I get a lot of enjoyment out of just looking for weird things. It's not just EDC gear, but I do find myself looking for the most unusual stuff I can find, which is why this is the 6th iteration of Unusual EDC. And a lot of those things that come across the desk are really, really cool, like genuinely cool things that I continue to use, like some sunglasses and some tie-down straps. There's all sorts of stuff that I've continued to use over the years. And I think this was even on Unusual EDC at one point.
It's not something I would wear every single day.
My necklace that I wear every day. But there are also a ton of head scratchers that you just have to ask, why does this exist? So here we have 7 new unusual EDC items, and it's gonna be mostly up to you to decide whether they are really cool or head scratchers, but we will go through each one and I will do my best to represent what it's all about. Sometimes I don't even know. So I'm just gonna do my best to try and show you each one of these things and what they truly represent. Maybe, hopefully, I'll try, I don't know. So with that said, let's do the damn thing. We're gonna start with the most terrifying thing on the table. This is one that I have to ask why, but also kind of understand. This is an OTF Scalpel. So it's like a craft blade, scalpel blade. Kind of terrifying, I'm not gonna lie. Like I just think all scalpel blades are kind of terrifying just because the way you have to change the blade feels sketchy. Even on things like this, you have to pull this tab up and slide forward. And they're just so incredibly sharp. It's just so sketchy, always. All right, why can't I? Nope, not gonna try it. On here, this is what I mean. Like you can change the blade easily, but you're always kind of like in close proximity to this extremely sharp scalpel blade. And I think that's why they're more terrifying. Also, with a typical OTF, if I were to try and stab it into this table, the blade would most likely just bounce back. And even if it's stuck into the table, it's just like sitting there in the table. This thing embeds itself into the table far enough to where you can reset the blade. So if like your hand were in the way, a normal OTF is gonna poke you, it's gonna puncture, it's gonna bleed. This thing is gonna cut you bad because it's just so thin, like so incredibly thin that it's, again, terrifying. I think I paid like 20 bucks for this. I think they're a little more expensive now. There's a million versions of this on Amazon that are all basically the exact same product. This particular one is from Caresso Love. I don't know. But yeah, just generic Chinese product that has been rebranded and put on Amazon by an unlimited number of people. It's just, they pop up and disappear and pop up and disappear. So there's no particular brand to look for. I'd say the build quality is decent. And honestly, when you're looking at something like this or this, and you're looking for something that's just quick to open boxes or just light work, this is not a bad idea. I just think that utility blades are more useful. Mainly because they're more widely available, they're a little more robust, they're less terrifying to use, and they're double-sided also. So I just prefer utility blades. I've never been a fan of all these little scalpel tools, but there are plenty of you out there, as I've seen in the EDC Weekly and Deep Cuts, that use scalpel blades. I think this is cool. It's very fidgety. Also, 20 bucks-ish, not gonna complain about it. It does have this weird audio, like hollow spring noise to it, but functions well, and it's very, very reliable so far. I mean, I've fidgeted with this thing for months in this office. So Caresso Love Scalpel OTF. More gimmicky just because I'm not a fan of scalpel blades, but it would actually function quite well, and it's very small. So we have come to the point of the video where we need to take a moment to thank our channel sponsors who make all of this possible. Obviously you guys do as well. I very much appreciate all of you watching this. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. But also, I want to thank Worksharp. Here is your reminder to use your shit and sharpen your knives. Check out Worksharp for all things sharpening. They have everything from small portable sharpeners like the folding field sharpener and the guided field sharpener, all the way up to a powered sharpener like the Kin Onion Mark II. Go check them out for all sharpening needs. There's a link in the description down below. And since we're talking about a lot of tools today, we cannot forget to mention Big Idea Design. They make titanium pocket tools, among other things like pins and watches and knives, but their pocket tools are really, really great. And if you want to check them out, there's a link down below. And if you use the link down below or my coupon code BDEDC, you'll get 10% off at checkout. And finally, Blade Binge. If you have not checked out Blade Binge, you definitely should. It's a secondary marketplace where you can buy, sell, and trade used goods. They have all sorts of stuff, lots of unusual things over on Blade Binge. Go check it out. They have an EDC accessories tab, grails tab, so you can find some really nice knives. If it's something you've been searching for and you haven't been able to find, go check Blade Binge. They might have it. So go check them out. Use the link down below. All right, back to the video. Speaking of like just generic Chinese product that doesn't really have a particular brand, this right here. In fact, the one I bought is no longer available. That brand, I don't see it existing anymore on Amazon, but now there's like 5 other ones that look exactly like this and have a random string of letters put together as a brand name. So I can't even pronounce the brand name. But that doesn't really matter because it's just a generic product that probably came from Alibaba or AliExpress or something like that. But when I first started this channel, titanium pry bars weren't like super popular. They were around, right? You had Lynch Northwest and maybe a couple other makers. And then there was like the Griffin Pocket Tool in titanium on Amazon, maybe one other, some Punisher Skull titanium pry bars. Now there's like 8 bajillion titanium pry bars. They're everywhere. And they've started adding all these little functions to them to make them more useful. But in reality, I think they're just adding these functions to sell them because they're aware that people will buy some gimmicky stuff. And this, in my opinion, falls under gimmicky stuff. First, titanium is not the best material for a pry bar, even though so many people use it. It's because titanium sells. People love titanium. I am a titanium whore myself. I understand it. Although it's not the best material for a pry bar. Tool steel is, because it's a tool, and tool steel is meant to be used for tools. I can't even get this out of here. So we're gonna steal another magnet just to get the bit out. So that's the first problem. You can't really get the bits out very well. Even using another one, it's not always easy. That is because it's a flathead. The Phillips, not the easiest to get out. But there is magnet retention on all these. Is that you know what? It's because I've been pushing the wrong way this entire time. If you put these in here this way and push on that side, there's a divot. I didn't notice the divot. I've been pushing on the wrong side of the bits the entire time. So scratch that. The problem with this tool, as far as the bit goes, the bit driver, there's no magnetic retention. So they have magnets to hold the bits here, but not when you're actually going to be using it, which is very annoying. That means to use this thing, you've got to like put your thumb on it, which is not ideal. And then you've got these 2 other hex holes for these micro bits, 4mm holes that, well, the bit can slide all the way through. I don't know why they wouldn't just make it captive, like cap off one side so at least, you know, the downward pressure keeps the bit in place. But if you're wrenching on something, you have to push because otherwise it's just gonna slide through. So you have to keep your finger there. And then if you pick up, the bit's gonna fall. So the only thing you can really do is like put lateral pressure on it so you can continue turning, but it's so close at that point that your finger's in the way. So gimmick. All the way through, this thing is a gimmick, and we haven't even gotten to the wrench part, which if you loosen this thumb screw, you have an adjustable wrench. Anything that's like this big, you're basically not gonna have enough length or width to this tool to grip a bolt or nut that's that wide, right? Because it's wider this way than this way, so your nut's actually gonna hit, and you're basically gonna be just barely gripping with the corners of this thing on a nut or a bolt. So this is really gonna be for nuts and bolts that are about this size, which really, really limits how useful this thing is. There is a bottle opener, so you can use that if you want. You can open this thing a little bit and pop your caps off your bottle. Honestly, 25, 30 bucks, this thing is very gimmicky. It will work as a pry bar, but you basically are gonna have to give up one of these for like a lanyard or something. I don't know, it's a gimmick. I would not recommend, although it might be something you're interested in, just not for me. All right, this one, I don't even know where to begin. I first saw a prototype of this at Blade Show this year in June, and I came home with one, which is a whole nother story because it has tracking on it, and I don't believe I ever gave Loop Gear the address to this location, but this flashlight, the non-prototype version, arrived here at this address. My P.O. box is public, this address isn't, and this thing arrived here, an address I don't really give out very much. I don't know how that happened other than the other one had tracking on it, like Find My iPhone, and I couldn't disable it. So make of that what you will. Not exactly cool in my opinion. I don't know what exactly happened there, but the people at Loop Gear have always been very kind, if not a little bit persistent, but there have been flashlights from them that I initially discarded, thought they were gimmicky and stupid, and then once I actually picked them up and used them, I thought they were really great. Like the SK05, Really cool flashlight, like really, really nice. And this is interesting, but in my opinion, very, very gimmicky. I don't know how to show you other than just to show it to you and show that it's not very intuitive, it's hard to follow, and I think I threw away the instructions a long time ago. This is the Loop Dot from Loop Gear. It is currently on Kickstarter. Well, the Kickstarter campaign has ended, and I believe they shipped out in September. So these should be out in the wild by now. But you have 2 flashlight modes, which you can rotate this little bezel here to switch between. And then if you click, rotating the bezel will change your brightness. Therein lies one of the problems that I have with this, is that to know what mode you're in, you have to look at it and then click and remember to not look at the flashlight while you're turning it on. Obviously something you'd learn in time, but not super intuitive. And then you have these 2 other menus. I don't know exactly what they are. This might be settings. No, that's not settings. This one is settings. Plus minus, if you click, you get arrows. And when you rotate, maybe it flips the orientation of the display. I'm not 100% sure. Screen brightness. That's what that is, screen brightness. We'll turn that all the way up. I don't know what this is. Vibration. Let's turn the vibration off, that's really annoying. So we have, I think, screen orientation, screen brightness, and vibration. That makes sense. This menu, however, we have this, which is, it's like water. See what I mean by like gimmicky? It's like water. It changes the orientation based on what the flashlight is doing. A display that this has an accelerometer, I guess. It has a smiley face or something. I don't really know what that does. I have no idea what that means. Here's another smiley face. I have no idea what any of this is. It's just different flashlight modes or different screen modes. I know you can slow stuff down and speed it up with this. A bunch of modes that nobody needs. What is this thing? Man, I don't know. I genuinely have no idea what most of these modes do. It does have an optional clip, which also is magnetic. Let's see if this thing is magnetic by itself. It is not. So this is the magnetism, and it is USB-C recharging. They're about 50 bucks. I didn't see a way to buy one online right now. I don't know if they're gonna continue making them or what, but they were 35 during the early bird on Kickstarter, 50 bucks. I just think there's way better flashlights for 50 bucks. And this thing just is way too gimmicky. This is what I was talking about, like so many functions on a flashlight that nobody needs. So you make up your mind about the Loop Dot. I think it's a cool concept. I think they could have done something way cooler with this LCD, and instead they kind of made it hard to use by having such a low resolution LCD. I think this could have been really, really cool, and it just missed the mark for me. So anyway, that's the Loop Gear Loop Dot. All right, now let's move on to something that I've seen advertised. Actually, the next 2 items were advertised to me on Facebook, and I had this idea testing Facebook ads. So testing EDC gear Facebook ads, because I got a lot of Facebook ads for EDC gear, and this was one that was just constant. And I bought this and some other stuff, and I never made the video. But this one, I felt like it was super gimmicky, but I haven't used it, but I feel like it actually could be pretty decent, maybe. So this is called the Pipe Vise, and this one is the Micro Stubby. So in reality, this thing is actually very similar in function to Knipex pliers, because it grips on itself if you turn one way. If you turn the other way, it opens up. If you turn towards, like into this handle, this thing is going to latch on to whatever bolt it's turning. And I don't have a bolt to demonstrate with other than this one on the wall. But if I put this on this bolt, it does turn and it does get tighter. But this bolt is like so stripped now that it's not easy to show you. I don't know what this square hole through the center is. It looks to be like a socket, like a 1/4 inch socket, and then you have a 1/4 inch bit driver in the end. You can put something like a Leatherman ratchet driver in here, and this would be a fairly capable setup with just Leatherman ratchet driver. And again, I don't know why these companies do this. There is no retention. That's my biggest complaint. Anytime anybody does anything with a 1/4 inch driver, put a magnet in it so the bit will stay there. Please, for the love of God. But $55 for this. So the one thing that I think this has on Knipex is with Knipex, you have to have the ability to get into whatever space you're working in and pinch the 2 arms together so that you can, articulate the bolt that you're trying to turn. This is much skinnier and smaller and can fit into much tighter spaces, although at what point this thing starts to slip. So maybe we do some testing with the micro stubby from Pipevise. It does come with this sheath, which has the ability to hold things like an extension. So you could put, you know, extensions and a few other tools here if you really wanted to, but this sheath is really, really poorly made. Like, this is a patch, but it's just made very, very cheap and poor. It is also a belt loop, so you can put this on your belt. There are bigger sizes of this as well. There's a micro or a mini, which is a little bit longer, but the micro stubby is the one that I saw promoted on Facebook over and over and over. 55 is a tough sell because the bigger ones are cheaper, but that's kind of the gist that you get from these little mini tools. Is they're harder to make because the pieces are smaller. It's just more machining, a little more intricate, harder to make. But the interesting thing for me is that this uses like a little collar for the construction. So as long as you don't lose that, this thing can be taken apart very easily. I don't know. It's a very interesting concept to me. It doesn't look aesthetically like very neat, but it does seem to work. And they have some very, very large versions as well that people swear by. The reviews on it are pretty good. I just don't know how useful this thing is. So maybe we do put this one to the test. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments down below. Most likely, I'll read them, think that's a great idea, let's do it, and then I will wait a year to 3 years to make the video. Look, I know what I am, okay? I know what I am. I'm gonna say this one's not gimmicky, and this is one that, if in some testing it's really good, it goes in the toolkit because it's small enough and universal enough to really cover a lot of bases. So maybe we put this up against the micro or like the 4-inch Knipex Cobras. That seems like a good idea. Okay, let me know in the comments so I can continue to ignore your suggestions. I promise it's not on purpose, okay? I promise. All right, this next one was also a Facebook ad, and I didn't think this one looked very good. The Pipevise, I thought maybe it's a little gimmicky. This one seems very gimmicky, but it is a multi-tool. We're gonna give it a fair shake, although we're not testing anything today, we're just looking at them. So this is from Windler, I believe that's how it's pronounced, and this is the Extra Stack. I couldn't find the Extra Stack on their website. So this, because I've held on to it for so long, is no longer in production, but I think pretty much everything that is in here is still available in some capacity on their website. It might be sold out, but they still have all of these things around. I did pick up the scissors separately because this didn't have the scissors, and scissors are cool. So we're gonna take a look at all this. So it comes in this paper stack, which is interesting, a very interesting way to package a product. So this says, every tool in the Windler range contains a finely tuned, powerful magnetic connector so you can attach them in any order or combination. The interesting thing is, well, first we have titanium frame locking handle with an LC200M blade, which is very interesting. 60 millimeter drop point blade. We have an M4 through M8 spanner with a bottle opener, Prybar, package opener. Then we have a 4 millimeter flathead, and then we have a Phillips head, which is actually 2 Phillips heads. So an extension PH2, and I'm not sure what that one is, but a stubby Phillips that's more wrench style than a driver. So we have PH2, FH4, PO1, and the monoscale. The monoscale is available on the website, at least was the last time I checked just a couple days ago. I don't think these screwdriver ones were. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, these were still on the website, and these are the scissors, which are quite large in cutting area. I'm gonna get something to test how well they cut. This piece of paper that I found on the floor should be perfect. Oh, that sucks. So their retention is like a detent right here, and if you cut too far, they just close and don't pop back open. They are spring loaded, but if you cut too far, they will lock shut, which is a little bit annoying. That to me is kind of like a design flaw. We have a locking knife, like kind of a friction style opener, but it is a frame lock. Like this thing is not flying open. You're not gonna flick this open. So it feels more friction, but it is actually a frame lock with a one-sided scale. So this thing sits flush against this one scale and kind of exposed. I actually talked about some of these style knives recently on a deep cuts and how They always kind of wigged me out a little bit, even though the risk of being cut by it when it's closed is basically zero. That blade is nested into this lip. So it's not really dangerous, but it's still a little bit sketch. But the way these work is you just stack these things however you want. In theory, it's like a little multi-tool. You have a Phillips head, flat head, pry-bar, scissors, and a knife all in one. The problem is this thing it's just kind of like floating around. Like if you were to use this to hang this thing, there's nothing keeping this tight. And I've looked up like various ways to try and use this thing. Like I just don't know what the carry option here is. I don't know what the purpose is. You've got tools that like break off and work, but the carry solution, like how do you carry this? It says new products in final development. They have a lot of new stuff like a driver with bits. They have a utility knife, a surf tool. I don't know what that is. Something to scrape wax or something. I don't know. That's what it looks like. A chain tool. So they have pliers coming. There are the scissors. So I think these might be updated scissors. They look different. Locking pins. So you would put something through this to lock them together, but that still doesn't keep them from just flopping around. There seems to be no way to keep it all together unless you get something like this. So then you've got to buy something to keep this from flopping around. I don't know. Plus, if I'm looking at my notes correctly in my order, this was about $200 for these 5 tools. Because the blade, these 2 screwdrivers, and this pry bar is the extra stack, and that was $159 before tax and shipping. And then the scissors were another $35. So this would have been right under 200 bucks, maybe right at 200 with shipping or tax. And that seems like a lot. Let's see what the knife is. $99. And if you want 440C, it's $75. So this is an LC200N knife, which should be extremely, extremely corrosion resistant. I don't know that I've ever seen LC200N on a knife under 200 bucks or under $100, it's $99. But also you only got one scale. It is extremely light and thin, and you could just have this as like your beach/surf knife, and I guess that's more of what this is geared towards, with them having a surf tool. I don't know. As far as like the coolness factor, yeah, sure, it's got a unique appearance, but the product itself feels like a little bit half-baked. Not a little bit, pretty half-baked. I just want to see if we can cut through some thick pasteboard with these scissors. No, there's just not enough grip. It wants to, wait. Sort of, it really wants to, but there's just not enough leverage to get it comfortably. But it does cut. I do think it's still a bit of a design flaw because it doesn't, it like can detent closed when you're still trying to use it. That's a little bit weird. Anyway, this is Windler and the extra stack plus the scissors. I wouldn't say pure gimmick, but definitely half-baked. This one is definitely a head scratcher. Like, who thought of this? Who thought these 2 things need to go together into one product? We have from Katuo a slingshot. You push this button and these arms come out and you have yourself a slingshot. You have a magnet here to store some steel shot there. And then if you push this button, you have a knife. Yep. And then I think you can flip this around and you have yourself a, not folding knife, not a fixed blade. I mean, this is technically a fixed blade with no handle. But you have this like interesting concept. Like who thought of this? I think it's interesting. I saw one at Blade Show, I think Blade Show West last year. So 2024 is where I saw this first. Interesting, and this is Apect. I don't know if that's designer or what. I love a good slingshot. I love a good slingshot. But I'm not 100% sure who thought, you know what my slingshot needs? A knife. I don't know whoever. Interesting concept. I can go ahead and tell you that the tubes will not be the most accurate for shooting. I mean, some people really prefer tubes. I actually have a tube bracelet slingshot that I really like, but something I learned after I designed my own slingshot, tubes are not the best for accuracy. The other thing that I've noticed is that they like twisted these up. The way this naturally wants to be fired is with these tag ends on the inside, and those should 100% be on the outside. And if you twist it this way, the tubes are actually twisted, which is not gonna it's not gonna be a massive effect on your shot or anything, but it's tied backwards, which is a little bit frustrating. This is a lot of tension, like a lot of tension for a really small slingshot. These double tubes, holy crap, like I would want to be able to fully pull this thing back to my jawline. There is no chance. That's like right there. If you go past that, I'd be afraid I'd snap that tube. That is a lot of tension on this thing. And giant design flaw, holy shit. Not that I'm at risk of like cutting myself like that, but I was pulling, and because there's so much tension, my finger hit the button for the knife and the knife started to come out. Because I was full gripping this handle. I hit the button for the knife and the knife came out, just trying to hold the slingshot. It's not super easy to do because it's actually in the palm of your hand, but that definitely just happened on its own. So the Katuo slingshot knife, definitely gimmicky for sure, but there's still like a cool factor to it. I don't think it's practical in any way. I don't think that this is practical. And not once have I ever thought my knife needs a slingshot or my slingshot needs a knife. It exists, it's out there. It's something that you can buy, 55 bucks. The blade on this, 8 CR13 MOV. And it just nests in there and it goes in literally any direction you want. That is a cool function because if you want, you can have this thing in any orientation. That's cool. Definitely on the head scratcher side for sure. Cool? Sure, I think it's cool. It's an eye catcher, but also a head scratcher. We are on to the very last item. It's also another tool, and it is definitely in the weird category. I bought this to see kind of what it was about. This was from a maker, an indie maker on Etsy who was making titanium milled pliers. I thought the concept was very cool, although I don't think they're the best pliers I've ever used because they are completely flat jaws. So if you're gripping something, they're not gripping around. So if you're trying to grip something big, they're just like barely hanging on and just wide open. So again, I don't know how well you can see this, but if you're trying to grip this, it works, but they're not. I'd like to see jaws that are scooped or scalloped so that they can grip a little bit better. And I get it, there are some flat jaw pliers like this, but I don't know. I just thought that was the weirdest thing about them, but I'm sure they're super handy. They're small, but still very, very strong. Like I'd say they feel as strong, if not stronger than Knipex, only because they have like a bigger handle, bigger grip, and you could really wrench down. I don't know what's gonna happen to these jaws. I think the jaws are steel, these are titanium. I don't remember, and one of the reasons is because I couldn't look it up. So these come from Quantum EDC over on Etsy. You can find his page, and he still sells some things, but the pliers are no longer listed on his site. You can only see previous sales that list these things. That's the only way I knew how to find them, was to go back through my orders and look them up that way. And he's apparently no longer making them. I'm not 100% sure. He could bring them back, I'm not sure. I personally wouldn't buy these again. If they were modified a little bit, maybe. The jaws are really short. I'd like to see bigger jaws and a different shape to them. The interesting thing and the cool thing is that they come with a spare set of jaws, which tells me that you could, and he could, if he were to make them again, create separate jaws that you could buy for your pliers. Now that is a cool concept because you could buy a pair of pliers and get the jaws you want. That's pretty neat. You could do this same thing with soft grip jaws. You could do the same set of pliers with, you know, cutters, snips. There's a lot of cool stuff that could be built off the platform of these pliers. Although, doesn't look like Quantum EDC is making them right now. I don't know if he's bringing them back, but the other thing is they were $145. This was 145 bucks. So I have the pliers with these jaws and then a spare set of jaws. $145, which is a lot for a very small pair of pliers. And maybe that's why they're not being made now, because it's not very competitive. Nobody else is really making $145 pliers. Basically $145 for pliers, you're looking at like Snap-on or a set of Knipex. So it's not the most budget friendly. It's not budget friendly at all. Just notice that there's like a nesting cutout for these jaws, and maybe that is a cutter. You know what I bet it is? I bet, and I don't know if it's intentional, but I bet it's a crimper. I just used my Leatherman to snip this because this wouldn't cut. But I bet that's a crimper, because if you put this in here and clamp down, it crimps it. So I believe you have a crimper on here as well. Whether it's intentional or not, I don't know, but it does work and function almost exactly like the ones on the inside of the Leatherman. So I believe that is an intentional crimper. Anyway, here you can see the size of these next to the Leatherman Signal, or no, not Signal, the Surge. I don't know if I'd recommend it because $145 for a small pair of pliers is a lot of money. However, this could be a really cool platform. A really cool platform for additional jaws. Like that's something that's really, really quite interesting. Although swapping out the jaws with 4 hex is a little bit tedious, but I don't know, interesting concept. And I do think those jaws could be made longer. Think about these jaws on this handle, maybe a little longer handle. I mean, that's a different product, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a cool platform, cool concept. Sorry to see the guy's not making them anymore, and maybe it was just there wasn't enough interest. Maybe they were too hard, too expensive. I don't know, but you let me know what you think of the Quantum EDC Minimalist Pliers in the comments down below. Okay, of all the stuff we talked about today, what was your favorite, and what do you think was the most gimmicky? In my opinion, the flashlight wins the gimmick by far, and then my favorite item would have to be the pipe vise, which is interesting because I thought it was a gimmick, but now that I have it in hand, I think it could be pretty damn good. I want to test this out, and I do genuinely think this should be put up against something like Knipex because they both do the same thing, just in a very, very different way. They're both using leverage to tighten and grip something harder as you tighten a bolt or loosen. As you turn into something, they get tighter, and that's how this works. That's exactly how Knipex Cobras work. I think they should be tested and put together or put against one another. I don't know. I don't know if that's worthy of a whole video though. We'll see. But that's definitely my favorite thing of the bunch. The only thing that I think I'd walk away actually using. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All right, that's it. I will see you guys later. And until then, carry on. Because they're more widely, my brain just shut down. Widely available. That's the word.